Good evening.
Good afternoon.
The Senate will please come to order. We will begin this evening with any announcements. Are there any announcements as we get started? The Senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. If the Senate Rules Committee will stay immediately following the floor, we're just going to take care of a couple housekeeping things. Thank you, Madam President.
We have 2 gubernatorial appointments which we've received from the governor, which are now being referred to the committees having jurisdiction. First, Thomas Walsh of Colchester as a member of the Vermont Green Mountain Care Board, and which will go to Health and Welfare. And then Jennifer Samuelson of Shelburne as Secretary of the Agency of Human Services, also going to Health and Welfare. The Senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the rules be suspended and that H740, an act relating to making appropriations for the support of government, appearing on the calendar for notice, be taken up for immediate action.
The Senator from Windham has moved that the rules be suspended and H740, an act relating to making appropriations for the support of government, appearing on the calendar for notice, be taken up for immediate consideration. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We will now take up H740 for immediate consideration. We have on the calendar for action H740, an act relating to making appropriations for the support of government, read for the first time on March 30th. It was referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as set forth in the addendum of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of H740.
H740, an act relating to making appropriations for the support of government.
The Senator from Caledonia, the Chair of the Committee on Appropriations, Senator Kitchell, is recognized for the report of the committee.
Thank you, Madam President. We have documents that I just want to reference as I present this year's big bill for the 2023 budget. We do have copies of the web report, which help track decisions made in terms of what the governor recommended, the House change, and then the Senate change. And you'll notice that it's annotated so you can see the reason for the change in the amount appropriated. So that document does help kind of track the progress in terms of what got funded. In addition, this bill is over 100 pages long, and to help go through highlights, we have this published, which is the highlights of the appropriations. Then there's another document that is one-time funding of the B1100 and then ARPA and general fund. So those documents were distributed earlier today, but they help identify, because there's so many different streams of money, including the general fund one time as a result of the revenue upgrade, and then the federal money as well as the infrastructure money. So there's a lot of different funding sources to keep track. So those documents, I hope, will help you see where we were making appropriations either to the base appropriations or to one-time needs. I think the easiest way, so I don't repeat everything that I did in caucus, and because these documents actually went out to everyone on the web Friday night, is just really review the process that your appropriations committee.
Madam President,
The Senator from Windham is.
it's come to my attention that some senators do not have all the summary sheets.
Are there any senators, or which senators do not have the seat? Do you mind raising your hand just so we can ensure you have copies? Please keep your hands raised and we'll make sure that you get a copy.
Thank you, Madam President.
Senator, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam President. It's one thing that we have been trying very hard to do is get our fiscal house in order. Certainly the pension bill was an example of that. And if you remember in the pension bill, we were dealing with the underfunding, not only on the pension side, but on the health care benefit for retired state employees and teachers. And this budget actually starts the funding of health care benefits. And that was able to do that because of the increased contributions that were negotiated with both teachers and state employees. If we kept the same amount of money for pensions, additional address the fact that we had never had an ongoing funding source except pay-go for those benefits. The other areas where we were really focusing on where would we have internal service, internal deficits. And so workers' compensation was one, and we reduced that by 1/3. The Vermont Crime Victims Center for Crime Victims, we've had for a number of years in studies in terms of the inadequacy of the funding, relying on fees and attached to fines, recognizing that that really wasn't the best funding source to begin with, and recognizing that we had to stabilize the work of the center, but also the positions that have been in our state's attorney's offices. So we actually put $2.5 million, and you'll see a separate line in the state's attorney's budget for those victims advocates. Again, the cannabis board getting started and the upfront costs and how to, over the first 3 years, minimize the development of any structural deficit. The courts, once again, we have struggled with the cost of court operations, but if there's an area where it has been a continuing challenge, and that's court security, which is really necessary for the operation of the courts, and the budget as proposed by the administration at only $750,000, which was not sufficient. We spent a lot of time how to use the state paid deputies, but we also knew with the increased hourly cost, we had to address that need in the branch of government. Something that we had done in the budget adjustment and then we put in reserve was $20 million for a bond redemption. And so this is authorizing the early bond redemption, but also we're establishing a capital projects cash fund. Not this year, but in the next fiscal year, 24, there would be $6 million that would be available to go into that fund as a result of the bond redemption, as well as any other savings that would be attributable to debt service, and that would be available to fund capital projects with costs under the $20 million. We also established an IT modernization fund, and there's some appropriations both for Department of Labor and DMV. We know that fees have not been updated, and there are significant revenues attached to the fees. This would be a report back, particularly in transportation, where the fees may be a critical part of drawing down the federal dollars. We do want to make sure that our reserves are full and our budget is balanced. In addition to getting those fiscal issues dealt with or addressed, essential services. And one of the areas that we have really received a lot of communication, and I think there's been a lot of public attention given to the need for mental health services and the waiting list, as well as the instability is really tied to the level of support we provide. And these agencies, in fact, are really carrying out services for populations that used to be served in Vermont institutions, such as the state hospital in Waterbury or the training school in Brandon, or even for those of us who remember the threats of being sent to Virgins. So we had three major institutions that were that are no longer in operation, but the way in which Vermonters are served are through community-based organizations. We are doing increased SUD treatment, recovery bed capacity, doing money, transitional money, one-time money, because for the coalitions, prevention coalitions, recognizing that in our cannabis bill, once the excise revenue flows in, 1/3 up to a total of $10 million is specifically allocated to prevention. Also, I would like to remind this body that we passed a bill last year that created an office, a chief prevention officer, because we were concerned that over time, all these efforts were being developed in somewhat of an ad hoc way. And we wanted to really rationalize and better coordinate those investments in prevention, whether they would be tobacco, whether it be drug, alcohol, whatever efforts that might be funded could be better done if it was through a more coordinated approach. So this is actually something that came out of the Senate as a way of trying to get a better understanding of how these investments were being organized, and also to see how progress was being made. And so there's language here around the need to coordinate future investments and policies through that office. Legal aid, once again, was moving money to or increasing the base simply because the demand for services has been very significant. Childcare, this is the CFAP program, and then one area that was really something that was done out of the Senate side, and that is increased support for our parent-child centers, which we recognize as a major investment in prevention and supporting families and addressing the sad reality that Vermont as a state is an outlier in terms of the number of children we bring into state custody. And we had a study that we financed, it was done by the University of Vermont, that showed that we were not, surprising, at least to some of us, not making the same level of investment in prevention as other states. So there's language here that makes it clear that we want to invest in the centers, but we also would like them to focus on the families and the children who are at greatest risk of being come into state custody. We also know that many parents are really struggling with addiction. And so once again, that is prevention. I think sometimes people think of prevention in very narrow terms, but we view prevention in terms of after-school programs, investment in mentoring, our parent-child centers, and there are many other ways in which we can support Vermont families and children very directly. The adult day program has really suffered as a result of COVID, so we are providing additional money to sustain those centers. 2 centers unfortunately closed during COVID, but they're a key part of supporting particularly seniors and people with disabilities in their homes and communities. In other areas, the regional dispatch was something that we really focused, and I mentioned earlier that in testimony, we know that our current dispatch system is overloaded and it really is very vulnerable. And so we, unlike the bill that came over from the other body, we are proposing to release money so that we can bring up more dispatch centers so that we can provide greater capacity. Also, the fact that many calls are being sort of spilled over into the other dispatch centers, and it is not a good situation, and we felt that it needed to be acted on in a much more swift way. Not that more work doesn't need to be done. Ongoing funding is going to be an issue, but that was why we were releasing money in that way, to get at least 4 centers up and operational in addition to the ones that already are. The higher education, once again, We had not done an increase to the University of Vermont. I think it was 15 years. And so this is the base increase, as well as the Vermont State College system to really do the funding at the level that was recommended in the transformation plan. Pay Act, that's obviously the compensation, the salary for state employees is funded. That's $26 million. And then in other areas, broadband, we use the capital construction because for the clearly identified areas that you didn't get into a question, was it eligible? So broadband was $95 million. This is out of the $113 million ARPA capital funding. And then we did the $16 million for libraries, and the rest of the balance went to connectivity. Climate, we need to go through because you can see, once again, I would say in housing, we did as much as the other body, but they had nothing for the missing middle, the home ownership pilot that we passed, and therefore we had to reflect that funding, and that meant an adjustment to the ACD in terms of what we had in the budget from the other body. But please be assured, in terms of the overall housing, it was the same commitment, and recognizing that is one of the top priorities that we are facing, both for people who are without housing and in temporary housing. But the other thing that we're hearing is people coming to Vermont to work. We heard this from Beta Technologies, that available housing is one of the biggest challenges. So that when people actually have jobs here, finding the housing, particularly in certain areas of the state, is really a challenge. So the other point that I would bring out is this budget reflects the spending that's been obligated in H-159, which is the workforce development bill, and then there's another bill, which is the workforce bill in 703. Those appropriations are in a separate bill. Obviously, they have to be accounted for in building this year's budget. On the back side, it's sort of the whole budget at a glance in terms of unduplicated totals. You may remember that we operate our Medicaid program under a federal waiver called Global Commitment. So one of the things that we have to be concerned about is our budget neutrality cap, and that's under negotiation at this point. We seem to be getting closer than we ever had historically because of the way it has been negotiated over time. A couple of really important areas, I think, for many individuals in the Senate, and that is the fragile condition of our mental health agencies. We have waiting lists. We have workforce challenges there, as you can imagine. And the budget, as it was passed by the other body, had a 7% increase. We raised it to 8%, but there's also some additional money in the mobile crisis initiative that was started in Rutland last year. So I think that with that, I think I've covered the highlights. You will see that there are many one-times. We tried to weigh them all out. We set up, we prioritized, and we wanted to make sure that we were shoring up our systems that were really critical to serving the most vulnerable of Vermonters. We wanted to deal with our fiscal issues. We wanted to minimize any kind of internal and structural deficits. And we also wanted to invest in the treatment and other service delivery systems, particularly during this time. So the vote in committee was 7-0-0, and we hope this body will concur. Thank you.
The question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question?
Have a roll call.
The senator from Franklin has requested a roll call vote, and the senator from Chittenden is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I wonder if I might inquire of the presenter.
May.
Madam President, so much goes into this bill, and I'm look forward to supporting it. But it's an $8 billion bill, and so I would just ask a little patience. As to me, I think it's important that we ask questions. So we've talked a lot about prevention, and I notice in B312 a reduction, and I almost feel silly asking this, Madam President, because it's about a just over $500,000 item here, but this would be, I would think, clearly in the arena of harm reduction, where we're reducing the budget by about $500,000 for needle exchanges. This is clearly a harm reduction strategy, and I wonder if sometimes we see reductions on one page because it's added somewhere else. Madam President, is that money somewhere else in the budget?
I think is overall the case. We did, and I may go to Senator from Lamoille who did that section, but if you go over onto page at the end of B313, you can see what the Senate did. We added $2 million for the residential beds, which are sober and recovery. We did increase the Jenna's House from $400,000 to $500,000. We funded the recovery centers, which was not included in either budget. We also did, as I mentioned in the earlier presentation, funded the UVM, HIV/AIDS, and supports that population as well. So that we had funding perhaps in a little different ways to get to the same, I think, the same place.
Thank you, Senator. One more question. We know that cannabis proceeds will be slated, a large chunk are slated, reserved for prevention. And I wonder if we have any sense, as the discussion come up, whether prevention and harm reduction would be sort of the same thing in terms of our budgeting priorities moving forward.
Madam President, I think that gets into why we see the office of the Chief Prevention Officer as such an important role, because we're going to see different departments or different Department of Mental Health, Department of Health, and other entities want to and have that kind of discussion around how we allocate those prevention dollars. The other area that I would mention as well is the education fund will receive all the sales tax and it's slated for after school programs, which for me is, I would put that very much in a prevention category as well. Kids are supervised and they have mentoring and tutoring. And so I think the evidence base for after school as a prevention strategy is demonstrated. So I think between the two, but in terms of how much harm reduction versus prevention and what interventions and what the evidence base is, I think is really the task ahead of us as we take those $10 million and use them in the most effective way.
I thank the Senator. I look forward to chasing down the detail from perhaps the Senator from Lamoille before third reading. And I would just offer, we have seen a record overdose deaths, a record we should celebrate, obviously. And syringe exchanges is sometimes controversial, but an effective harm reduction strategy. So hopefully it's somewhere else. Or hopefully with the cannabis revenue, we could increase our funding for these kinds of strategies down the road. And just have to restate, Madam President, look forward to voting for this budget. It's an incredible amount of work and very thoughtfully put together. Thank you.
The Senator from Lamoille is recognized.
I think I can be slightly helpful on this. It's hard to be more helpful than our chair has been. when you look at the syringe exchanges that are in here, there's syringe exchanges in the budget that came over from the House. They were in 3 different places. Underlying, built within the health department budget, there's $150,000 statewide for that. There was also money for the Howard Center and one other piece for syringe exchanges. In the process of looking at this, what we did was the money for AIDS and syringe exchanges, they can apply for the money which is in the one-time list in B11. The substance misuse prevention coalitions, they can apply within that $3 million pot of money for more money for the syringe exchanges. Not being in a position where we deal with this all the time and having 3 different pots of money for syringe exchanges, what we viewed was working with the health department, they would be better to sort out where the money was needed in that. But it's not specifically said, but within that $3 million, which is in the one-time list on B1100, they can make application there.
The question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? The senator from Caledonia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, since this is the last opportunity I'm going to have to speak from the floor on a budget like this, I thought I'd make a couple of observations to explain to folks why I'm going to vote the way I'm going to vote. It doesn't matter, frankly, whether you vote for or against this bill. Somebody is going to either hate you for spending money in an area that they don't like, or is going to hate you for not spending enough in an area where they really wanted more spent. I think at the end of the day, I can make a couple of observations of small items in this budget. I call them small, but they're really not. And I will give a classic example of what appears on page 42 of the web report in the clean heat standard positions that are now being created with this bill. We had a fairly lively discussion, President, a few years ago on the Global Warming Solutions Act, whether it would actually accomplish what it was designed to and hoped for. We ended up passing something that I did not believe then and don't believe now will achieve a result that is measurable. But it will certainly put a burden on those who are least able to handle it at the end of the day. I was struck by the comments of my seatmate earlier today during the caucus, where I believe the quote was, "I've never seen more positions." And here we are creating positions for something that really does bother me tremendously, because we are ducking our own responsibilities and trying to do something to work on climate change. Having said that, I recognize, however, that this board has worked very hard to construct a budget. Although it is $8 billion, more than we've ever spent before, the committee has, as I recognize it, done its very best to try to put together a budget that is balanced and tries to do as much for as many people as it possibly can. So while normally I would have voted against the bill just because I was angry about a particular provision, my vote today will be yes, because I want to go away at least admiring the committee for its work and trust that at the end of the day, they have done the best that they can, and we have some responsibility as fellow senators to try to support that effort. Having said that, making some future observations, we will not have the revenue streams available to us next year. And that is not a situation I'm comfortable with looking down the road. And I hope that people understand who are receiving funds in this bill that somewhere there has to be a reckoning of this body with what we are trying to do. I'm not sure we have quite come to that point yet. I refer back to this one itemized entity as part of that conversation. We really haven't got the ability to sustain what we are trying to do here, and that bothers me considerably. But I will be voting in support of my colleagues. I think I've done the best that they can under the circumstances. Thank you, Madam President.
The senator from Caledonia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just like to make sure people understand we have to account for other potential spending. Those bills, many of them have not been passed, including the one that was just referenced, but the structure of the Natural Resources Board or municipal fuel switching, which is in 518, or the racial justice statistics. So what you're seeing here at the end, without knowing of the ultimate outcome, we are having to accommodate that potential spending, because otherwise, if we'd spent without recognizing those other bills that have yet to be acted on, we wouldn't have the money to accommodate them, and we would be having a deficit. So I just want to be clear, and please note it says other bills. So that's what section is attempting to make people realize. What will be the fate of some of these bills, I think is yet to be determined. The number of positions that would be required may be changed as they go through the process, and there may be some that won't actually see action at all. But we have to anticipate those potential costs as we're heading to the bottom line. And I would like to again say that we were very vigilant, because we have two sources of money, one-time and base. And so a lot of what you're seeing is how we're using the one-time money, the opportunities that those one-time dollars provide. But we have been very vigilant to make sure that we are not building a base that in 24 months after all this federal money unwinds, that we don't have the revenues to support. So thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations? And the senator from Franklin has requested a roll call vote. Are you ready for the question? The secretary is kindly asked to call the roll.
Senator Ballant.
Yes.
Senator Baruth.
Yes.
Senator Benning.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes, with explanation.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collimore.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Hooker.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell.
Oh, yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Yes. Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormack.
Yes.
Senator Nitka.
Yes.
Senator Parent.
No.
Senator Pearson.
Yes.
Senator Perschlick.
Yes.
Senator Polina.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Sirotkin.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Terenzini.
No.
Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Please listen to the results of your vote. The yeas 28, the nays 2, and the senator from Franklin is recognized for his explanation.
Thank you, Madam President. My vote in favor of H 740 is made with mixed feelings. I'm grateful to the chair of the Appropriations Committee for managing the gargantuan task that constructing this bill involved. This budget contains many good things that I support. I think that much of this will strengthen our state and help our people and businesses recover from the COVID pandemic. But I'm concerned that we have focused far too much on short-term government programs and far too little on making the transformational investments that we need to make lasting change. As the governor has stated, we must not squander this once-in-a-generation opportunity to use federal funds and state surpluses to give Vermonters relief from rising costs and create lasting transformational change in our struggling rural communities.
To be clear, with this vote, you propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations. The question now is, shall the bill be read the third time? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I was really taken this morning, Madam President, by the question from the senator from Essex Orleans who asked the chair of Appropriations, is this a balanced budget? Have we balanced our fiscal house? And I think it's something that we forget in this state, that we always pass a balanced budget. We do not deficit spend in Vermont. And not because we passed a law saying we can't deficit spend, but because we as Vermonters understand that our constituents send us here to pass legislation that we will also fund. And so I think it's really important as we vote on this budget that we say to Vermonters, this is a budget that does keep our fiscal house in order, just like it does every time that we come into this chamber. That is the work that we do. It is a budget that maintains essential services, because at this time, when we're still not out of the woods with this emergency, we've got so many families still reeling, we know we have to continue to fund essential services. And this budget makes good on a promise that we made to Vermonters at the beginning of the session. It was that we were going to invest in things that most mattered to them: broadband, climate action, water, housing, and community investments in workforce development and economic development, so that we come out of this emergency stronger. I'm proud of the work that we've all done together. It is a reflection of our values. Thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall the bill be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've ordered third reading of H 740. I believe this now does bring us to the orders of the day. Unless there's I believe there has been a request to pass over H 534. So we will move on to S 72. Calendar today, S 72, an act relating to the interstate compact on the placement of children. The House has proposed to the Senate to amend the bill as set forth on page 2663 of today's calendar. And the underlying question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal amendment on S 72? The senator from Chittenden, Senator Lyons, is recognized for the report.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, this bill was returned to us from the House with some technical corrections. The second and the fifth proposal of amendment are really corrections from a capital T to a lowercase t in the word the. And then the other amendments are to conform with gender neutral language, which is in other parts of the bill. Your Senate Health and Welfare Committee voted to concur with this proposal, and we ask the Senate to do likewise.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S 72? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And you concur with the House proposal of amendment on S72. There's been a request to pass over S265 and H159. So we will move on to S171, an act for the adoption of a state code of ethics. The House has proposed to the Senate to amend the bill as set forth on page 2666 of today's calendar. And the underlying question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S171? The senator from Washington, Senator Polina, is recognized for the
Thank you, Madam President. The other chamber made 3 relatively small tweaks to our code of ethics as we passed out of this chamber. 2 of them have to do with the training involved in the ethics bill. They made it clear that the training would be focused on the Vermont State Code of Ethics rather than ethics in general. They also suggest that when the Ethics Commission reports back to the legislature, they include in that report an analysis of the training sessions themselves and whether or not there's a need for improvement in the training sessions or more of a focus on other pieces of the training. The third thing they did was they revised the gift portion of the bill, and we had exempted admission to conferences and whatnot as being acceptable gifts. They broadened that a little bit because sometimes the conference might include transportation of food and the cost at no cost or low cost. So that would be part of the exemption for the conventions or conferences that include those elements. The Government Operations Committee voted 5-0-0 to concur. We hope that the body will join us in concurring with the other body. Thank you.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S171? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've concurred with the House proposal of amendment on S171. We will now move to SR16. We have on the calendar for action SR16, a Senate resolution urging the United States Postal Service to improve immediately the reliability and timeliness of its deliveries and requesting that Congress take any necessary legislative actions to effectuate this objective. It was referred to the Committee on Government Operations. It was referred to the Committee on Government Operations on April 15th, and the committee recommends that the resolution be amended as appears on page 2667 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the resolution ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the resolution.
SR 16, Senate resolution urging the United States Postal Service to improve immediately the reliability and timeliness of its deliveries and requesting that Congress take any necessary legislative actions to effectuate this objective.
The senior senator from Wyndham and the chair of the Committee on Government Operations is recognized for the report.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm not going to read the resolution. We heard a lot of testimony about the horrors of people not getting their mail for many days, people without their medications because they relied on the postal system for it. But I am going to read the resolves. So, resolved by the Senate that the Senate of the State of Vermont urges the U.S. Postal Service to reassess its 10-year transformational plan with the goal of immediately restoring the reliability and timeliness of mail delivery to the standard that existed prior to the plan's implementation, and resolved that the Senate of the State of Vermont urges the USPS administrators to allow local USPS employees more authority in the provision of excellent customer service to local patrons. We heard that regulations sent down from headquarters were really impacting customer service. Resolved that the Senate of the State of Vermont urges USPS to purchase vehicles that are equipped to meet our state's challenging and at times unique travel conditions, and that we send a copy to all those listed. The committee vote was 5-0-0, and we ask for your support.
The question is, shall the resolution be read the third time? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of SR 6. I do believe that completes the orders of the day. The senator from Wyndham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Pending announcements, I move that the Senate stand in adjournment until 1 p.m. Wednesday, April 20th.
The senator from Wyndham has moved that subject to announcements, the Senate do adjourn until Wednesday, April 20th at 1 p.m. I do want to confer with the secretary because we may have a slightly different arrangement tomorrow.
Take a brief recess.
The Senate will stand in recess until the fall of the gavel.